Just a moment ago, we got our image component to expand and fill up everything on the screen by adding in this prop called fill. And it's kind of a mysterious prop. So in this video, I want to give you some more information about image component sizing. And what I mean by this is sizing of the image component that is provided by Next.js. Because this is a very specific video, especially something very specific so early on in the course, it is 100% optional. You do not have to watch this video if you don't care about something so specific as image sizing. So if you don't care right now, no problem. Just skip over this video right now and maybe come back later on if you feel like it. I'm going to give you some behind the scenes information here, show you a thing or two around the image component, and just help you understand how we make sure this thing is sized the way we expect. Okay, so let's get to it. Now, quick backstory. Let's imagine really quick that we change the layout of our homepage and we decide to show the entire image just down here at the bottom left-hand side, and we want to show some image or some text off to the right-hand side of that. This is a totally fine layout, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But let's imagine that some user with a very slow internet connection tries to access this page. What would happen when they try to load it up? Well, loading up an image like this might take a long time. So it's entirely possible that the first thing to be loaded up would be all the text on the page. And if that were to occur, a user might end up seeing something like this. So it might initially show up just the text, and the text, because the image has not yet loaded, would be off to the left-hand side. And then maybe a couple of seconds later, as the image actually gets loaded, the image is going to suddenly pop into view, and this text is going to suddenly scoot on off to the right-hand side. Now, having our text kind of jump around on the screen as we are loading up content is kind of annoying. It's really annoying to maybe try to read something and have it jump around, or to try to click on something and have it jump around. Having our content move around as we load up images and whatnot is referred to as layout shifting. And again, layout shifting is really annoying, and we want to try to avoid it as much as possible. Layout shifting is something that gets addressed and kind of partially solved by using this image component. Let me help you understand how. So here's a very quick example. I'm going to comment out all that stuff right there. I'm going to write in some sample code. I'm going to delete it very quickly so you do not have to write this stuff out. It's just a very quick demonstration. I'm going to put in a div with a class name of flex-row. I'll then put in my image, the src of home, img, and some whatever alt text. And then right after that, I'll put in a div that says buy our product. Product. There we go. I'll now save this backward to the browser. I'm going to zoom way out. Now I can see I've got my image on the left-hand side and some text off to the right-hand side. Now, if I refresh the page at present, everything loads up very, very quickly. So I don't really get to see this content shifting or this layout shift in action. But I can open up my Chrome development console, go to the network tab, find the drop down that says no throttling, and change that to slow 3G. So that's going to simulate a very slow internet connection. And now if I refresh the page, let's see what happens. So when I refresh, we're going to see that the text over here starts off on the right-hand side, which is exactly what we want, even though the image has not yet been loaded. Even though we initially have, in theory, like no info or no idea how large the image needs to be, the text shows up correctly. And it's all thanks to that image component. Now, this is a great feature to have. It's really fantastic because we're not going to have to deal with content jumping around on the screen. But the flip side is that we're left with a little bit of a challenge. It's clear that when we are loading up the page, we need to have some kind of placeholder element here. And that placeholder element, well, it kind of needs to know how tall and wide it should be. Because that placeholder needs to be so perfectly sized that when the image finally does load in, we don't want the text to move around at all. And answering this question right here, well, that's kind of what this entire video is all about. How do we know, or how does the image component know how tall and wide it should make the placeholder? So here's how that question gets answered. Turns out there's a couple of different ways this little placeholder element right here gets sized. So 3 easily available options that we have. Again, I just want to repeat, this is how the image component decides how large or how tall and wide it should size the placeholder before the image has even started loading up. So option A, if we are using a local image, so that is an image that is located directly inside the source code of our project, then the dimensions are taken from the imported image. So that's like the image file that we've got inside the public directory, that home.jpg file right there. And that image's dimensions are used as the placeholder dimensions for the image component. We can see this kind of easily if we open up our console, and at the top of the file, we do a console log of home img. So when you import that image, you're not just getting the raw image data, you're actually getting an object stating where the image is located, and then the height and the width of the image as well. So that's kind of like our placeholder dimensions right there. I'm going to remove that console log really quick. If we are using a remote image, so an image that is hosted off somewhere else online on a totally different server, then we can't really use option A at all, and we have to fall back to options B and C. In option B, we can directly assign a height and a width to the image component as props. So here's how that would work. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to put in a hard-coded height of, say, about 600 and a width of 800. And now if I flip back over and refresh, I'll see that the placeholder has now kind of resized completely. It's now much smaller to suit those hard-coded height and width dimensions that I supplied to it. And then the final way in which we can size this image or get that placeholder sized is by using the fill prop. This is kind of the automatic way, besides using the first option up here where we just use a local image. So if you assign that fill prop to the image component, then the image placeholder is going to automatically expand as much as it possibly can to fill up its parent element. In our case, for our application, that's kind of exactly what we want. So I'm going to delete this example right here and go back to what I had before. We want this image to really just expand to fill up as much content as possible on the screen. So we wrap it with a absolutely positioned element that has a class name of inset0. Inset0 also kind of means just expand and fill up as much content or as much space on the screen as possible. So we've got a div that expands to fill up the entire screen. And then by passing the fill prop to the image itself, we're telling the image, okay, also just expand to fill up this div. So in our particular case, all this stuff is not a super big deal because we are not really suffering from any content shift because we really want our content to be kind of behind the screen and just fill everything up. But if that were not the case, we would have to fall back to one of these three different options. Okay, so like I said, just way more information than you probably wanted to have around image sizing, but I just really wanted to make sure that you understood this concept of layout shift because it's one of the big reasons we use the image component at all. I'm going to make sure I've not changed any code here. Yep, still looks good. And if I flip back over, everything is still as expected. Oh, I got to unthrottle. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Exactly what I started off with. Okay, now that we understand this, let's move on.